And thanks for staying with us here as we continue to bring to you live broadcasts of the 2024 United States elections. No doubt the coverage of the U.S. elections is still on, and I'm Joe Hansen, and I'm joined as well by Judith TV. As the results starts rolling in, we'll keep you updated on the latest development.
Yes, indeed, that's right, Joe. Now, polls have closed in several states and vote counting is underway. We expect the first wave of results to come in from the East Coast, where voting ended a few hours ago. Now, we can confirm a number of states which will be reeling out in due course.
That's right. Well, let's take a look at the key battleground states, especially Florida, Pennsylvania, and of course Ohio, are expected to be crucial in determining the outcome of this elections. Judith.
And we're already seeing some early trends in Florida. For example, the Republican candidate is leading in the rural areas, while the Democratic candidate is performing well in the urban centers.
That's right. We'll continue to bring you live updates, expert analysis, and breaking news as it happens. And now stay tuned for real-time results and also insightful commentary as well.
In the meantime, you can always check out our website and as well as our social media channels for interactive maps, polling data, and in-depth coverage of the elections as well. Election results are flowing in. Former President Donald Trump has won Florida, Texas, and other traditionally Republican-leaning states, while Vice President Kamala Harris has secured victory in Maryland, Vermont, and other traditionally Democratic states. Now, several battleground states are too close to call, as Trump has won Iowa and Harris has taken Illinois. Now, we're going to get into more analysis here. We have two guests joining us to give us some in-depth analysis on pretty much the results of the elections as well, and also what we preempt to see come the elections. We're going to get started with our very first guest who's joining us, and that's Dr. David Matsanga. He's an African affairs analyst from Tanzania. Dear Salem, he's joining us live, and we also have with us Professor Echa. Okay, I understand we only have Dr. Matsanga at the moment. Doctor, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning across in Lagos, in Canada. Those watching us across Africa and the world, this is a great moment that all of us have been waiting for.
Thank you so much. I mean, let's get started. We have seen very traditional Republican states, not surprising, vote in Trump, from Mississippi to Arkansas to Oklahoma to Alabama to Florida, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and even South Carolina. And the map is almost looking similar to what we saw with Biden, but it's still very much closely contested. What do you hope to see at the end of the coalition exercise?
Thank you very much. The traditional states have followed the pattern. These are the most religious states that believe in Trump's re-election. Most of them are not convinced that the Democrats have looked after the economy, after the social structures that hold together these people. Like in Texas, they believe that so many of the foreign people coming in from the south into their country, so those type of states will hold. But what I believe in is, at the end of the day, American democracy has been shaken. American democracy is beginning to know, when you hear too many of these things of saying tampering with this, tampering that is not what we wanted to hear from a state that calls itself a super state or a prefect or the godfather of the world. I'm very much displeased with the way this hearing of tampering of this, that tension is what is worrying me. But at the end of the day, my preferred candidate, and I will not say it until the end of the show.
All right, very interesting. But let me also ask, how significant is Kamala Harris's early win in Maryland? There's also a win in Vermont and other Democratic strongholds. I mean, we've seen that of Trump. We've also seen that of Kamala Harris. How does it affect or, impact on the results that everyone simply is waiting for?
I think Maryland has shocked. It doesn't not shocked me because Maryland is closer to the power to be. That is the state house. And as Mr. has said about the urban areas, the urban dwellers, the ones we call in America hamburger eating guys like Dr. Matsanga, yourself, others. They seem to be knowing more about the politics of the world than the rural folk who want a preserved America. The pattern seen in most of I used to observe elections in Zimbabwe, I observe elections in Uganda. If you look at the Uganda pattern, the urban area, in Africa mostly, most of the urban dwellers, those who have gone to London, Washington, and come back, we seem to know more about politics, and there we go. For the working class goes quickly for Harris. But in the rural folk, I think it is going to be a tussle, a very huge tussle between Harris and Trump, because the rural folk look at the example of abortion, for example. Look at the states that are shocking you, that are coming, say, yes, we agree with Trump on this, with Trump on that. And Kamala Harris has come out also in the strongholds of the Democrats. There's a battle there. People are saying, look, the whole thing must change. We must have that Americanness. Bring back America. That is the bottom line that has brought up contest today.
Well, now, I've just been informed that we're now being joined by Professor Iche Sikanku. He's the University of Media, Arts and Communication, UNIMAC, and he joins us from Accra, Ghana. Well, I mean, Professor, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I can see from your back there, you're all ready and prepared to go regarding the elections. So I'm just going to get started and ask you what you see with the trends so far. Early wins for both Kamala with traditional states, Democratic state. We've also seen early wins with Trump as well for very traditional Republican states. But I have to ask, what do you think has been different between the last election cycle and this election cycle? What is surprisingly different with this election results this time around?
Yeah, thank you very much. When you look at the election results, not very much has changed. I'm sure we all know by now that a lot of the attention is going to be on the key battleground states. However, it also depends on how Kamala Harris performs there compared to how Joe Biden performed last year. In the last electoral cycle. When you take Pennsylvania, for instance, one of the places that we have to start looking at is the major cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. That is where normally the Democrats have their strength. There's a huge African-American population in Philadelphia. In 2016, the numbers didn't come up largely or hugely in Philadelphia, and that is how come Hillary Clinton lost that state. Also in the swing regions, there are swing counties in those swing regions as well. When you go out to the suburbs, that's where Donald Trump has his strength. And so in a state like Pennsylvania, it may come down to counties like Scranton, Erie County, and Northampton. These are the three counties that we should be looking at as the results trickle in. I know there are many people who are looking at the results and there might be some trepidation because perhaps Donald Trump is ahead at this point. But it really does not mean much because, as you said, these are reliably strong states for both candidates. So what we can do is to begin looking at where the results are tilting in the various swing states. If you go to Georgia, for instance, you want to start looking at Atlanta, where the Democrats normally would have a majority of their votes coming in. If Kamala Harris is underperforming in such a state, especially among the African-American population, that is going to sound a very, very dangerous night for her. You go to North Carolina. In North Carolina, presently, Donald Trump is ahead over there. He has flipped certain states that Biden won. But at the same time, we are yet to hear from big cities like Charlottesville, where there are a lot of young people over there. North Carolina, too, has seen many people immigrating over there. And so it's changing the complexity of that particular state. And then you come to Arizona. It's still too early to say anything in Arizona. And then you go to Nevada, where not much is coming in. So this is what it's beginning to look like in the swing states. But in terms of the general tenor of the race, if you ask me how different it is, for the first time, abortion and female reproductive rights have become a major issue in a way that it has not been in a U.S. election. The second one would be the economy. And if you look at some of the exit polls, they are also speaking to a leader who understands their plight, a leader who is able to change their conditions. And so these are some of the factors that would begin to affect the election. This is going to be a big women's vote election, and the number of women who will turn out would be a very big deciding factor.
Yeah, we hope to see what the numbers would look like in terms of voter turnout for young and old, middle-aged, as well as gender. But just for a minute, we need to patch on to our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. She's live at the viewing party, if I'm correct, for candidate Kamala Harris. That's the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, and she joins us live now all the way from Howard University. Afia, well done. And what is the latest with you?
Yes, good evening, Judith. We're actually outside the White House at the moment, where Joe Biden is behind us, quietly watching the election results that you have just been talking about. So we have 91 Electoral College votes for Kamala Harris. We have 178 for Donald Trump. We've just had a projection that Trump will win Mississippi. Now, these results that we have in at the moment are as we expected. They are where we expect them to be for this time in the evening. Democratic strongholds have held, and Republican strongholds have held as well. Some interesting analysis that is coming out, particularly from Nevada. Officials there saying that young voters don't have any experience signing their own names, and thus can't match their signatures to their ID for verification purposes, and that is becoming very, very problematic. I think something that people didn't really anticipate would happen. You also have some very, very long lines, especially in Pennsylvania. Now, the polls have closed. It is past 10 p.m. Eastern time here, and so the polls have closed in Pennsylvania, but there are some very, very long lines, over an hour wait, so people still having to wait to vote. And in Nevada as well, as polls are closing, there is some very, very long lines there as well. And actually, whilst we were changing location, we did see some people here in Washington, D.C. still standing in line to vote, even though the polls closed at 8 p.m.
All right, Ava, we had heard that in some states they had to extend the time so that people can actually have more time to vote. We're going to see an extension of the time, not just in Washington, but of course in different states, different polls, just to ensure that they can accommodate more people. And tell us what the solution is for the youths who couldn't even get their signatures right.
Yes. Well, yes, well, there's two parts to your question there. So the first part I will answer that we may see polling stations open later to accommodate the number of people that want to vote. People are being reminded across social media and as they wait in those lines, if you're in line, even if you are in line and the polls have officially closed, you can still cast your vote. So people are being encouraged that if they are in line to wait in those lines, but we may see some polling stations open a bit later. As for those young people, and I'm sure it's not just a problem we will have in Nevada, probably across the country as well, whose signatures are not matching up with their IDs. Now that is problematic because you need your ID to vote, and if that can't be verified, perhaps you cannot cast your vote. So there may be lots of young people perhaps voting for the first time that may find that their vote won't count, and that speaks to a deeper problem with how much our young people are writing, using their handwriting as opposed to just phones, keyboards, etc. Perhaps it's something that needs to be looked at for voting in the future. Is your signature perhaps the best way of you verifying your ID? Could you use something electronic, fingerprints or something like that? Perhaps that's something that needs to be looked into in the future. I think now that it's a relatively new problem, it will be something that will need to be drilled down on before the next major election like this one.
Afia, it makes you question much about voter education. Voter education, especially when it comes to the younger voter population. And we saw this here, in Nigeria during the last election cycle for 2023. And we saw that as well. So hopefully going forward and just moving forward, voter education will be a top priority for the electoral body for the United States of America. But I would like to ask about inclusivity for those people living with disability. Besides just the younger crowd, was it easier for them as well to vote? What was the consideration and procedure for them to make them feel inclusive in the process and exercise?
Absolutely. Where we saw two polling stations that we visited today, there was dedicated people that were there, and their job was to help people who were less able, whether they were visually impaired, whether they used a wheelchair. There was people who were dedicated to helping them vote, helping them be able to cast their vote. And it was very prominent at both the polling stations we went to, and we did see them being accessed by lots of people. So I think that clearly shows that polling stations are for everyone. We saw children accompanying their adults, going to vote, babies and pushchairs. It's a very inclusive environment, but absolutely there was people who were dedicated to helping those less able to vote to cast their vote. And you could cast your vote electronically, or you could do a paper ballot if you wanted. So there were options there as well.
All right. Anyway, I think we'll just let you go right now, and hopefully we would circle back to you and find out what the latest situation really is. You did also mention, if I got you right, that the president or so has also dropped by. How true is that? And if it's true that he's dropped by in that area as well, can you give us a hint on what happened as soon as he came over?
Joe, behind us in the White House, the heavily barricaded White House, I will say, Joe Biden is quietly watching the election result. Very different than perhaps what he would have expected, given that he was supposed to be the top ticket candidate before he relinquished that position back in July. But yes, he is quietly watching the election result. Very different from the celebratory rally that's going on across town at Howard University for Kamala Harris and her campaign. Yes, Joe Biden quietly seeing out this election cycle in the heavily protected and barricaded White House behind us.
All right. Thank you so much, Afia, again, our international correspondent, for keeping us up to date with the latest news all the way from Washington, D.C. Thanks for your time. Well, let's move away from Afia now. Let's go back to our guests who have joined us here. We do have Dr. David Matsanga, who happens to be, of course, a global African analyst. I'm going to add global to that because this time we're discussing the United States of America right now. And we're also joined by Professor Etse Sikanku, University of Media, Arts and Communications, all the way from Ghana, if I got that right as well. You've heard from our international correspondent. Now, she's spoken about what's happening there in Washington, D.C., the youths and so on. But let me quickly run through this stats, and I'd like us to react to it. I'm going to start off first with you, Dr. Matsanga. Now, early voting rules are indeed, of course, state by state. It's also estimated that more than 230 million people are eligible to vote in the United States. All right, but about only 160 million of them are registered voters, and not all of them will actually vote. So we're starting to see voter apathy as well show its face, even in the United States of America. Like I always said, a citadel of democracy. Dr. Matsanga, what's your take on this? Does it show that it's not just in Africa, and now that we're seeing it in America? What's your reaction to that?
First, thank you very much, and thanks to my colleague, Prof. As I said by saying, I was not very impressed with the American type of democracy today. And here you are, your correspondent on the ground tells you some are coming to do signatures. This looks like a banana republic type of election. Surely, I told you that this has not impressed anybody has done political science to the last iota like myself. I am not happy with such something coming from the so-called super party policies, the whole of Africa. But coming back to your point of the voter apathy, it was worse in your own country. 94 million people registered, and only 26, almost 27 million. There in Abuja, you remember, you interviewed me. I was not very happy. Where did the people go? Did they go to Atlantic Ocean, sink down, and then come back? What happens to this other 68 million, something like that, disappeared in your own place, my own country? There's several places in Africa, in Kenya, in Uganda, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa. Voter apathy is becoming something which is very chronic in elections. But let's look at the figures. Why do people get disappointed? Some of the things that politicians do, the younger generation, my sister talked of the younger generation across there. Most of them are very good on Twitter, Facebook. They are busy insulting people here and there, giving you likes. But when it comes to that today, I've seen it. I've observed the elections in 52 countries in the world since I became aware of what the world looks like. But I have found that youths don't turn up. Even if we have lived, they don't turn up. They live the old generation too. So when the old generation turns up, and you see the youth who are got to change things, to make things work, it is very sad. Now, America will have 106, as you said, million out of all those other people who have registered. Why do we waste? Then the question comes, maybe Professor, why do we waste all this money printing ballot papers? You see, that is why I've been advocating for change of system in Africa. Do we change? Look at Botswana, for example. Yet it looks so now quick, smooth transition. In Africa, we waste money, ballot papers. Look, our own countries, you print all these 94 million ballot papers of different things. Then people don't turn up.
All right.
Look at our laws.
All right.
Another thing that I want to touch on is states. If Harris is doing very badly in Georgia, then my dear sister and brother, whatever Matsanga has been thinking about, and which I hope prophecy comes right. If she's doing badly in Georgia, and she's doing badly there, she's trailing Trump, it means people are comfortable with Obama's type of fury, because some of them still have a very big bond to queue with Obama. He left us with nothing, African continent. For me, I think these elections, the data is showing there is a problem, that voted has not gone deep enough. It is just like an African country anywhere or an Asian country that is going to voting.